Despite being one of the world's fastest growing economies, India still struggles with extreme income inequality and parity. Poverty is also there, and the richest 10% hold over 77% of the total national wealth, while millions barely have earned enough to survive. So, what are the key stats which we are going to talk about in this video? So, India ranks among the most unequal countries in terms of wealth distribution, and also the second key points which we are going to talk about in this video is over 230 million Indians were pushed into poverty due to COVID-19. COVID-19 is also a very major has a very major role to play in India and poverty, because a lot of people have lost their jobs, have lost their source of income. And so as we will move forward in this video, we will get to know the reason and how India can counter effect this what's happening here. So let's move ahead with the background and the causes. Let's talk about the historical perspective. So post liberalization in 1991, India's economy boomed, which we also study in the course which taught by ma'am in our course. But benefits were, though it boomed, but benefits were not equally distributed. So the major problem what we are having here is the wealth is not equally distributed among Indians, because the major chunks of wealth has been concentrated in a very few people in India. Also, the rural versus urban divide has widened very significantly, and informal sector workers remain vulnerable. So, what are the key causes of inequality and poverty we can talk about in this video? So, the first and foremost will be, as I said, inequality is there. So, the unequal division and access of education and jobs. Education is the path which lead to a better life and lifestyle, by follow which we can get into a better life and lifestyle. So only 10% of the India's workforce is formally skilled. So what we are seeing here is 90%, which is like a very huge chunk of Indian population who are into a job sector are still unskilled. So only 10% of the workforce in India is skilled. Second, as I mentioned earlier as well, that there is a division between the urban versus rural areas, because agricultural dependence leads to unstable incomes, because we can't predict like how is the agriculture season going to unfold in the upcoming year. Wage disparity is there. Wage disparity is also a major reason which lead to poverty and income inequality, because the top 1% here in India earn more than 40% of the India's total income. And there is also a gender and caste disparities when it comes to job and income. So what can be the proposed solutions and implementation timeline? Okay, so we can talk about here in short term and long term. So short term, increase in minimum wage standards and social security for informal workers, because this sector is where the major population lies. And then we can expand direct benefit transfers to reduce extreme poverty. And and what can be the long term solution for this? Implementation of progressive taxation to redistribute wealth, and strengthen financial inclusion and entrepreneurship support for low income groups, because financial inclusion is also something which lacks in India. So but there are also some barriers which are here, that is political and policy challenges, economic factors like resistance to higher taxes on the wealthy private sector, reluctance to increase wages, because as the taxes increases, they are reluctant to increase the wages for in private sector. Social factors are also there, deep rooted cause and deep rooted caste and gender inequalities affecting access to opportunities. So what can be the key takeaways from here? For India to truly progress, economic growth must be inclusive. Bridging the income gap is not just about fairness, it's about creating a more stable and prosperous nation for all. Policies alone can't fix inequalities. Social awareness and collective actions are crucial. Let's push for a more equitable future. Thank you.